Welcome back to the Arcopia Show. Today I'm going to talk about prepper housing and real estate. So I'm going to cover a lot of topics. I'm going to go on some epic rants to just give you a general outline. This is late summer 2022, and I am in the central part of Canada. Much of what I'm going to talk about is going to relate to other Western type countries because of there's a human nature aspect of communism, democracy, and all Western countries kind of generally go in the same way. It's just a human psychology thing. You know, the seasons, weak men creating hard times, and then the collapse, and then after that, then we can rebuild and make things better again. But for prepper housing, I want to cover the size of your house, the type of house that you build, where you build, the type of land that you build on, the size of land that you need, going through a subdivision process. Maybe you are going to start a subdivision special preparedness like-minded community and how that actually doesn't work. Some government grants and stupid things that contradict all of their other systems. Living in an RV. People in the West living above their means. The houses are too big, inefficient, and people are spoiled, and they're going to go from spoiled to very poor, living in a tent city or their car or RV type of thing. Okay, let's get to it. So let's start with the size of your house and type of house that you build. So in the West, people are spoiled. In most parts of the world, people live in a small little hut, very primitive. But most people on the planet Earth, they don't have to deal with extreme harsh climates like we have in Canada. So their little hut can be relatively primitive. You know, plant a tree that shades the house in the summertime, one little solar panel, one battery, can run some lights. It's easy to grow food. They can grow food year round. They don't really need much. You can just kind of survive outside because of the mother nature aspect of things. But in Canada, if stuff goes well in those countries where nice tropical climates and mother nature isn't the threat, they're not going to feel a huge difference if something in society kind of goes south because they're used to living primitively. They all eat local year round. They have gardens. They live primitively. So they're not going to be affected because they're already living primitively. Whereas in spoiled Western countries, everybody's extremely entitled, living in very large mansions. They don't live close to nature. They don't garden. They don't eat local food. It's going to be a fall from much, much, much greater heights. And, when you hear about a prepper talk that's in Canada or USA or Europe or something, they're worried and anxious because we're all spoiled. Now, it's like, I want a solar array, but I want to power 10 TVs in my house and play my video games and have high-speed internet and have this and this and that and this and that. And that's just because we're spoiled, and our quality of life is going to go down in the West moving forward here until it gets extreme bad. And then we kind of hang out in that extreme bad for years or decades. And then the smart, strong men with work ethics and personal responsibility build it back up to fix the stuff from the weak men, irresponsible people that wrecked everything. But so with that in mind, you're spoiled in the house you're probably living in currently. So you building a small dwelling versus a big one. So I kind of got into this with one of my podcasts, minimalism versus maximalism. So a small house requires less heat. It's cheaper to build. You build it with your essentials. I'm going to get big into the property tax liability. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just talking about property tax. So that's a bill that you can't get away from. That's government extortion. So you can't pay off if you pay off your mortgage, you don't have a mortgage payment. If you put up solar panels, you don't have an electric bill. If you put in a wood stove or do a high efficient build, you don't need a natural gas bill. If you do a well, you don't need a water bill, but you can't get away from property tax. So when I first bought my land, I was going to build a larger home. Actually, I did 2 sets of fully drafted plans, and then I settled on like literally the smallest house we could stand. And oh man, that was a blessing in disguise. I'm so happy with that decision. So the first house I submitted was similar to developments in between me and the city. So you're kind of your standard type of house, but it had some passive solar stuff and everything. And before I went ahead with the build and put in for the permit and stuff, I'm like, okay, I want to figure out what the property tax is when I build this thing. So I went to like the municipality has mill rates that they times. The education system province has mill rates on the property tax. Property tax is based on the square footage size of your house and the estimated assessed value of your house, but mostly square foot is the thing. And then the Assessment and Management Association in my province, I submitted my plans to them, and I asked for a quote on the assessed value and to help me figure out, timesing it by my municipal rates, what the property tax is going to be on it. So the first house I did was $9,000 a year in property tax was my estimated. So it had silly things like a covered porch, so just a roof that's open to the air. Well, they tax that at an extreme high rate. So you're better off to do a little detached gazebo, and then you don't get taxed on it. It had a deck on it, a wooden deck at like ground level. Well, if you don't do a wood deck at ground level, but instead you just lay patio bricks, then you don't get taxed on the patio bricks and things. So I learned all these things because if you build something big, a house that has a big property tax liability, as far as I'm concerned, you wrecked your land. You wrecked that property forever, because that has a government extortion fee that goes up on average 4% per year over the last, as far as I can remember where I'm at. And you can't get away from that. So another example would be if somebody offered me a house in a development on 6 acres, really nice big house for a smoking deal, but attached to it was a $9,000 a year property tax liability payment that I can't get away from. I don't think I would take your house for free, because I don't want to attach my name to government extortion that you can't get away from. I hate that. So that drives the price of your house down when it has a massive government extortion property tax liability. So when you have bare land, what you want to do is do a small dwelling where they can only extort you so much, because that is one bill that you cannot get away from. And again, it wrecks your property if you build a big dwelling. But building a small dwelling, it costs you less to do. You can insulate it better. You put a smaller wood stove, it's going to use less firewood. It's kind of all your essentials. It doesn't wreck your property. So all of those benefits. Now with passive solar technology and thermal mass and things, what I've found is a tiny house, it doesn't have much mass to it, doesn't have much air space to it. So it's going to heat up more in the summertime, and it's going to cool off quicker in the wintertime. So the smaller a dwelling per square foot, it has more exterior exposure, exterior walls per square foot. So let's say, for instance, you did a 400 square foot little dinky house, and it's 20 feet by 20 feet. But so that has 80 feet of perimeter exterior wall on it. But if you did 2 of those together and attach them, so instead of 20 by 20, it's 20 by 40, you lost a big percentage of exterior wall space. So a bigger house has less exterior wall space. And then when you do a bigger building, you can do more insulation in the walls. You have more room for stuff in there and thermal mass storage. And it just because it's bigger, and if you properly build it, of course, it's going to be cooler naturally in the summer, and it's going to be warmer naturally in the wintertime. And so somebody living in a school bus, for instance, a school bus conversion, they put like 1/2 inch of rigid insulation on. Like if their van or school bus or whatever the heat stops or the generator stops pumping out the little bit of heat, it's going to be the same temperature as outside within a matter of minutes or hours type of thing. Whereas a big, high efficient dwelling, lots of insulation, properly built, is going to take days or weeks to get the same temperature as outside. So that's something to think about. Here's another thing to think about that's really annoys me. Well, it used to annoy me. Now I just laugh. But I guess I'll talk about my dad in the 80s. He built his own house, and it's called double wall construction. So it's 2x4 walls with a 6-inch air space in between. And so it's a total of, what is it? 14-inch walls or a little better. And that's packed full of cellulose insulation. So that has an R value of 12 plus 12 is 24 plus 20 is about 44 in these thick walls. Now his house is a larger footprint bungalow. So with a larger house, when you have a thicker wall on the outside, you still lose interior square footage, but it doesn't feel like you're losing as much as a small house when you do thick walls. So for instance, a standard build house is just built out of 2x6s. So your exterior wall is 6 inches of insulation with cellulose in it, and then floor space. So in a 20-foot by 20-foot tiny little teeny weeny house, if you wanted to super insulate it, instead of a 6-inch wall, maybe you do a 12-inch wall. So that's for every 2 lineal feet of wall on the exterior, you lose a square footage of usable interior space. So that is, out of a 400 square foot house, you lose 40 square foot because that's how thick your walls are. So you reduce the living space of your house by 10%. Now, in the stupid Western system that we have, when your house is assessed and appraised and the bank looks at it and the property tax municipality people look at it and the assessment people look at it, the size of your house square footage is based on the exterior walls. So the walls of your house that aren't usable space, that's still counted as square footage. So instead of a 400 square foot house, it's still a 400 square foot house, but instead of having 360 interior square feet, you only have 320 because your walls are so thick because you made a high efficient building because you're preparedness minded, conscious about the environment and things. But your property tax stays the same. So per square footage, you're paying a whole lot more property tax. So it's actually, in this screwed up people that virtue signal, they care about the climate and care about the world, you're actually better off to do thinner walls and have a bigger heating bill because the property tax is exponentially more. When I was assessing my first or second house plan that I was going to build, I worked it out where literally if I put a standard size bedroom on the back of my house, it cost me $1,000 a year property tax per bedroom. So if I put 2 more bedrooms on the back of my house, it's an extra $2,000 a year property tax. So, over 10 years, that's 20 grand I have to come up with to have these extra bedrooms. Now, with my house, I did it small. So instead of double wall construction, because it's a smaller footprint, I did 6-inch walls, but I put 1.5 rigid, the really good stuff. It's an R 9.8 or 9.6 or something rigid on the outside with an R20 wall. So I got about an R30 wall in my tiny house. The best windows money could buy, 100-year standing seam tin roof on 3/4-inch plywood. Super high-end finishing, like there's 130 cabinet doors in my smaller house. And I guess where I'm getting at, as a builder, I decided to build that smaller dwelling that's high efficient. It won't freeze. It's passive solar. It's got the best windows. But for the same amount of money, I could have built a house standard or substandard, just standard building code like your average house. I call them just shitty houses. If you refer to me, if I'm talking about a shitty house, I'm just talking about a standard built house that doesn't face the right way, doesn't have any extra insulation, doesn't have anything special about it. But if I built a shitty house 3 times the size of mine, it would have cost the exact same as the house that I built. But my house doesn't have really a heating bill. It does. I'm not worried about it. It's very good preparedness. And it turns out we got used to that small house. It's very convenient having a small house. But in the stupid system that we live in, so if I built for the same amount of money a house 3 times the size, but it had asphalt shingles, no special insulation, the cheapest vinyl siding and flooring you can get, and a Home Depot kitchen, my property tax, because it's based on square footage, would be probably around 3 times what it is now. So a massive property tax liability, a bigger heating bill, and things like that. But in the system that we live in, so I'm going to get into, let's talk about appraisal people first. So I didn't realize, but you have to have a 4-year degree to be a home appraiser. Now, over the years of being in real estate and things, when an appraiser comes out, it's like, does it have windows? Check. What is the finishing? High, medium, or low? Like the interior finishing. Does it have a roof on? Check. How old is the roof? Check. Asphalt shingles? Check. Like when my house was appraised after I built it, the appraiser came in, and does it matter that it's 9-foot ceilings? No. Does it matter that it's super high-end finishing on the inside? No. A wood stove costs a lot to get. It's called a wet certification with the government. You have to have, and nobody puts wood stoves, so there's one guy in my entire city, and it's expensive to put a wood stove. But a wood stove is actually a deterrent for the general public, the appraiser, and the bank. Doesn't matter that you have a 100-year roof on. So if I just put standard asphalt on like everybody else and had to re-roof every 15 years, so over the course of the next 100 years, they have to spend, not including inflation, thousands of dollars every 15 years, where mine doesn't have that bill. Mine has R80 insulation in the attic and R30 walls. Does that matter on the appraiser? Does the appraiser know? Does the banker know? No. Does the municipality know? No, they don't. Does the assessment management people know? Well, kind of. They want to extort you for more. It's mostly just the finishing and certain things on it. But the whole system, so again, if you live in a crappier, bigger house, you get rewards from the system. So let's say you wanted a line of credit to do something else with, or if you want to sell your house for some reason, you are going to have, it's going to be easier to sell a bigger, shittier house than a small, super high efficient house without any bills in it. Now, both for the buyer, that's what they want. The bank, that's what they want. The appraiser, that's what they want. It's all based on square footage, and people don't think about property tax liability. So when you're doing any sort of building or real estate, it took me a long time to learn this. I made some mistakes. What I would do is build a house and build it really good. So, oh geez, it's only another $1,000 and I can double up the insulation in the attic. And this is going to have a payoff for the new owner in a very short time, because you have no heat loss from R40 to R80. And, that's the LED light bulbs, that's super beneficial. Like this is what I would do for the long term, but nobody cares. So when I built a spec house to sell, especially if it was in a, not a top quality neighborhood, so I'm not going to have a top quality buyer, every extra dollar I spent on a house that I'm going to sell is a dollar that I lost, because nobody gives a shit. Now, if I was to, I wanted to do this as a test. I never did, but I wanted to build a semi-detached duplex or 2 houses side by side. I guess I don't have to do it. It's a waste of my time to do it as a test, because I know the outcome, because I can, game plan it. But one house you build, and they look identical. But one house has granite countertops and no insulation in the wall. The other one has laminate countertops and double the insulation in the wall. The one with the granite countertops, because that's what people want. People would literally choose granite countertops over insulation or something, that a smart person would think about 100 times to 1. So I would sell the granite countertop, no insulation house 100 or 1,000 times over before I'd sell the other one. Or if you asked $1,000 more for one house, but you can't see the double insulation in it, or the windows that cost 6 times as much as standard windows, I'll sell the cheaper one. The banks like it better. The appraisers like it better because nobody knows. And the general buyer, they don't know and they don't care and they're not smart enough and they don't think about passive solar. They don't think about efficiency, stuff like that. There's another thing in Canada. So if you're smart and when you're going to go build a house and you're going to build it efficiently, put in good windows and blah, blah, blah. But if you did that, then you, again, being smart, you lose out on all the free gimmies and stuff. So there was general home improvement government grants where if we'll give you $20,000 if you upgrade your windows and something else or more insulation if you retrofit your house. So of course, if you build the house properly, you don't get that the free gimmies. Only stupid people in shitty houses get that. And it actually didn't work out because it was anyways, the numbers didn't even work for that, but I'm sure a lot of silly people took advantage of that. So essentially, just with preparedness and a lot of things in life, you have to live 2 separate lives. So for me as a builder and real estate person, I realized my mistakes that there's no market for high efficient things, or I wasn't able to find my market in my demographic, or I didn't try hard enough, or I just couldn't find my market. So no, I'm selling to I've never sold a property or a house to a non-government worker. They're all government workers with huge incomes and can get mortgages easily. I've never sold to somebody with a business or whatever, but the demographic I was selling to, nobody cared. So to make a real estate business, you have to create one product, one house that's to sell, a spec house where nobody gives a shit, where you can make money on it. Because again, if I tried to sell my setup in my house, I lose money on it. In fact, the house that I built it myself, so I had no labor, and it took me 9 months double time. And the material I had into it, and versus the appraisal came in at $30,000 less than the raw material purchases it took to build my house, and not including any labor. So I'm a big loser because my house is really, really good and efficient and smart, and it makes sense, and it's personal responsibility, and reduces my heating bill and ongoing costs, and reduces property tax liability. So I get hit by the system every single way, and the general public, right? So that's stupid. If I wanted to do a property that I'm going to sell, you do a standard built, up to code, asphalt shingles, maybe some pretty, whatever the trendiest color is, granite countertops, no extra insulation, standard light bulbs, don't bother with LED, Home Depot kitchen, and that's how you make money. So you have to live 2 lives. You build a house to sell, and you build a house for yourself. Now, I kind of realized this before I had enough to establish myself at my permanent place where I'm never going to move from. So in the city, a house that I'd fix up and was going to live in for a little bit, I'd overdo it. And everything I overdid on, you lost money. So I know it's hard if you're don't have your permanent spot yet and don't know where you're going to be in the future. Just know that it's a waste of money, anything you put into the house. So unless it's your house. Unfortunately, that's how the system and the general public and psychology and the demographic and the government and the entire system works, just so you know. Okay. All these people living in spoiled, larger houses, that don't really produce anything. They're either on welfare where they stay home and don't do anything, or they're on welfare and they have a public sector job where the taxpayers have to pay them. it's a pretty gravy life. They got a big house. They go on vacations. They got leased cars and stuff. Well, all of this is unsustainable and spoiled, rotten Western things for Western people that don't produce anything. So this is going to go away. But a lot of people, they're going to get their cars repossessed. They're not going to be able to make their mortgage payments. The property tax is going to be too high. There's going to be no buyers when they try to sell. Type of thing. And then they're going to go from a spoiled, rotten new car and big house to living in an old van that they bought type of thing. There's not going to be any in between. So if you take some personal sacrifice and do a smaller dwelling and frugal and keep your bills low, then it's going to be less painful for you in the future, right? So just being personally responsible today will benefit you in the future, whereas most people are not personally responsible. That's like just a microcosm of every single thing wrong with the general public and society and democracy and the government and everything. There's no personal responsibility in a communist system. Okay, one more little point. So if you own land, it's yours. There's no mortgage on it even. There's nothing. You have land and you want to park an RV out there. Sorry, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to live on your own property. So this is why I've told people, I've explained this, like, sure, you can build a cabin in the woods, out in the forest on land that you don't own and hide until essentially a government organization finds you. Then they will kick you out of that house, make you demolish it. And if you don't, they'll demolish it for you because it's not supposed to be there. You can't hide that way. So if you own your land, you can't have an RV or a portable thing on it. What you need on your own land is a permanent residential dwelling, aka house, small house, that they can extort you on, and then they're happy. But if you do a small house, then the extortion is quite a bit less than a large house. But if you have an extortable residential property where they can assess and they send you a bill every year and they're happy, then you can also put an RV on your property as well, because they're getting their extortion out of the residential building. Then you can have an RV. So you could have a small house and then get 2 RVs, and you have to go outside to go to the bedroom or something, but that's on wheels. And as long as it's on wheels, then it's non-taxable. Or if it's under a certain amount of square feet, like 98 square feet, it is not taxable. And again, depending on your rules. So I had this incredible entrepreneurship idea that I thought was just amazing. It made so much sense to me. And because it made so much sense and it was so smart, I knew that it wasn't going to work, unfortunately, just like a lot of things. But okay, so in my local city, if you build a shed under 100 square feet, so that's about a 8 by 12 shack is 96 square feet, give or take, there's no building permits and no property tax on it. And like I said, if you do a standard size bedroom out the back of a new house, it's literally $1,000 a year in property tax. So I thought, geez, why don't you can get a little natural gas direct vent heater or fireplace, and I could make like a really nice bunkhouse. It's like an extension of your house for people in the backyard. So a nice studio or an office or whatever, but and do it nice. So it's just like your house, but there's no permit, no property tax on it. Like big bonus for somebody like me that has a working brain. But the problem with that is people can't get credit to buy it. So why do people buy a house? It's because they can get credit. Nobody has the cash to buy a house. So, but the banks and the appraiser and the system creates money out of thin air, gives it to you in the form of credit or a mortgage, aka death contract, and then that's how you can get the house. Nobody has the cash to buy a new vehicle. It's actually weird. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you saved up, you go, how much is this vehicle? Well, it's this much biweekly. Ask the salesman, no, how much is the vehicle? And they have to figure it out and look it up. And is there a discount if I pay cash? It's no, there's no discount if you pay cash. A vehicle dealership, they're not selling vehicles, they're creating credit. So they're an extension of the bank and the government. It doesn't matter that they're not a vehicle dealership, they're a credit creator, they're a debt company, a financing company, just like a bank. But anyways, these little under 100 square foot studios in the back, let's say I could build them for whatever, $7,000 or $8,000. This extension of your house, you just bring a trailer or crane it in like a hot tub and drop it in your backyard. You increased your house 100 square feet. But I could build them for 7, maybe I list or try to sell them for 12. All the general public and everybody, do they have $12,000 in their bank sitting around that they can do something smart with? No. Will they massively overpay for an old, decrepit, piece of crap, inefficient house? Of course. Like a $400,000 borderline tear-down house, sign me up. But a $12,000 well-insulated, better quality thing for your backyard that's $12,000, but you can't put a death contract from the bank on it. So I immediately knew that was a bad business, unfortunately, because it made so much sense that the general public and the society wouldn't understand. An example of that is on my local marketplace. There's been a backyard sauna, the same concept, under 100 square feet. Somebody with a brain figured this out. They build this wood-fired or electric sauna. It's just beautiful. And another one was an office thing, and we'll drop it off for you, blah, 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 but it's $17,000 or $18,000. That thing has been for sale. I've seen it for, I don't know, roughly 4 years. Not one purchase, I'm pretty sure. So, great idea, but not in society. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know kind of my principle of what is this SHTF? What are we preparing for? What is this catastrophic event? Well, SHTF we're currently in it. It's going to be a downgrading of people's lives, and especially in the West. We're currently in it. So we're in this slow SHTF. It's just, some people think like power off for a month is SHTF, whereas I think the odd power outage, once in a while is SHTF. Like, it's just, we're in it now. So that's my concept and my preparedness, personally responsible theory on that. So all of this stuff that I am talking about, reducing your property tax liability, preparing for the harder times that are coming because of, psychology, society, democracy, communism, government, whatever. The whole thing is a natural thing. In the West, we're going to lose our quality of life. So you do it ahead of time, super high efficient, smaller building, frugal, frugality, wood stove. So you reduced your property tax as far as you can get yourself out of debt, maybe a little bit. We're actually in this super high inflationary environment. My recommendation might be get as much debt as you possibly can, but good debt backed by something else that increases with inflation way more than the current interest rates. Get yourself away from, passive solar. We don't need any lights in our house during the day because there's so much natural light in there. Or you get LED lights, or you get a small solar panel system that allows you to have those lights. When you dig a well for your own water and do your own water treatment thing, and kind of do it ahead of time. So when everybody's YOLOing their long weekends and spending summers at the cabin and not working hard, or, I've known people that have collected, for some silly, my back hurts, collected disability for 10 years. Instead of doing something productive in their 10 years, where they're on disability, getting literally the same amount as they would have got working, they just gained 150 pounds, had health problems and further health problems, and didn't do a goddamn thing in 10 years, right? Too bad for you. The suffering is going to be worse. Okay, my next massive rant, if you're not sick of me yet, is about subdividing and developments, fun stuff. So let's say you have a bunch of agriculture land and you said, you know what, you're my brother, you know what, you're my best friend, I'm going to give you some land for free over here. We'll put your title on it because I want you, just from a preparedness mindset, to live close by me. So here's my gift to you. Here's 6 acres free. Here's 2 acres for free. Well, who's going to pay the $30,000 multiple government organization bill that comes with giving away land that you own to somebody else for no cost for free? It's still $30,000 in subdivision costs. So I've been involved with a couple development subdivision things over the years. So on both ends of it, buying and then selling. So this is going to be kind of a epic silly, or not silly, but epic rant. And if it takes me a long time to explain, just imagine having to go through the frickin' process with this. So I'll jump right into it. So it's about $30,000 to subdivide land that you own to another one. So the whole process is, first is application to the municipality for a $200 fee, and then they read that, and then with that they put a newspaper article out and send a letter to everybody living in 1 mile radius to let them know that there's going to be another title on a, like, whatever, 2 or 10 or whatever acre building residential site off of 160 acres or whatever agriculture thing. Now, first, obviously, you look up the rules and, okay, yes, this is the municipality's rules. Yes, I'm allowed to have this lot. Yes, there's no issues with it, but you still $200 mile. And then you have to wait till the next municipal council meeting. And if anybody complains there, then that's a factor taken into the consideration, whether they're going to even allow you to do that. Okay, no big deal. But let's say there's like a alkaline slough or something, or a hill, or it's not a perfectly flat place, or actually I think they make you do it with everything. But the surveyor has to come out and do a topographical survey on it. And then you also have to get the watershed authority involved if there's like a dried up alkaline slough, because you have to just pay them. So that's paid for through the surveyor, which is multi-thousands of dollars. That's a good business to get into, is home appraisers or surveyor, or anything that's kind of private, public, communist ish related. So like an appraiser wouldn't be a good gig to get into unless you had stupidity of the system, government, and banks, because you wouldn't get much business. A surveyor wouldn't be able to do as much work for as high amount of money unless the government caused them to have that work, type of thing. But anyways, topographical maps, the surveyor does his thing, and you pay the surveyor their first portion of the thing. And then after that, the surveyor provides you the thing that the municipal government needs, the, what's it called? Servicing agreement. Okay. Now that servicing agreement, it goes to the RM, or the municipality, and for them to review at the next council meeting. And now council meetings are every month, so it's a long process for a simple subdivision type of thing. But then they review it. Did I mention you have to go to the meeting, or I had to go to the meeting to see if anybody complained, and then I gave my 2 cents and stuff like that. But the servicing agreement goes there. Now, if the person selling the land has a mortgage of any kind, so somebody else on title, like a bank, you have to get a letter from the bank to go with the servicing agreement to the RM to attach to the servicing agreement that goes to community planning. Actually, let me back that up. Before that even happened, before the servicing agreement, first it goes to the municipality, and then the municipality forwards that to the provincial government, which is called community planning. And both the municipality and community planning have to approve. They also, both parties talk to every government utility to see if it's okay with them where the lines are, to make sure that it's okay. So it's got to pass the government municipality, the provincial government community planning, every government utility, and things like that. And that goes to community planning. It takes them up, it's about 90 days for community planning to review the simple process. Now, the fees with this. So the municipality collects $11,500 in fees. This is for, it's called infrastructure management fee. Now, it's very important in the rural location I'm at, there's no infrastructure included by the municipality. So there's no water, gas, utilities, nothing. The only thing that they do is they might have to grade the road ever so slightly more, because there'll eventually be one more person driving to and from their little house. And they have another bill that they have to send another property tax bill and collect money from. So I think that's what infrastructure management fee is for. It's for them changing a line on the map and having to have another address for another person to send another extra property tax bill. So I think that's what that's for. But there's also a fire fee in there for the local fire department, which is okay. That's like $1,000, and then 500 went to something else. But then the community planning provincial fee that the RM collects on behalf of community planning, that's held in reserve for a future school for the AKA community municipality thing, is 10% of what they value the piece of land that you're subdividing at in a fee upfront right now. So if they value a 2-acre, 10-acre lot or something at $100,000, you stroke community planning a check for $10,000 that they're supposed to hold in reserve with the expansion of more houses to build a school with. Now, I thought property tax, the new owner of that property pays property tax. Some of that goes to education, but that's just ongoing bills to have government indoctrination camp schools. That's not the actual school. So when you subdivide, they take 10 grand. So here's a check for 11,500. Here's a check for 10 grand. Thank you so much, guys. Because if you kick up a stink, you're going to have issues with the subdivision thing. But anyways, when community planning said, yeah, we checked it over and now we approve. Now you can go to the next step. Okay, so then you have to get this servicing agreement that I talked about. So this servicing agreement is essentially the same forms as before, but with another thing. And not only is it just a simple document, but you have to get a notary to witness your signatures. So I took it to my real estate lawyer. I had to pay him to witness my wife's and my signatures on the thing. And then you submit the servicing agreement back to the RM for the next council meeting for them to do another review. If it's okay with them, then they send that to community planning to do another review. And then community planning gives you accepted servicing agreement document where they signed it. And then that goes back to the surveyor. I missed another step. So with the servicing agreement, the municipality requests that if there is a mortgage holder or a bank on title, then you have to get a one-sentence thing from your mortgage holder that says we're going to accept the discharge of this. So if you have a line of credit or a little mortgage on your house on an agriculture land, or then I don't know if you knew this, but banks don't lend on agriculture land, agriculture buildings, greenhouses, anything like that. So when you get a mortgage, it would only be for your little house. So if your little house is over here, like a half a mile away on this side of the agriculture land, but you're subdividing 2 acres or something of agriculture land on the opposite corner, the banks, in order to give you that one sentence thing, that they don't have any lending on the mortgage, but it's all one title. The agricultural land is one title. they request a home inspection at your cost. So $600 cost. They come inspect your home half a mile away to see if they can release the 2-acre subdivision or extra lot that you're going to give away to your brother or friend or something, that they don't have any financing on, but it's all on title. So $600. And then for the bank to have the courtesy to doing that, this is a month-long process with the bank as well, is the $300 discharge fee for that 2 acres is another fee. So $1,000 there for the bank. And then when you have that, you submit that with the servicing agreement to the RM, and then the RM has to accept that. And then the servicing agreement and the letter from the bank goes to community planning, and they have to finally accept that. I think they also double check with all the government utilities for that acceptance. And then when you get that acceptance, there's another step. Then that goes back to the surveyor, and then they can, this is another month-long process. They put the pins in where it goes and do their, transfer, what is it called? I forget what this next thing that is called, transfer acceptance notification thing. Now, when you finally get that and pay the surveyors another couple grand, you get that, then that goes to the real estate, or no, that doesn't go to the real estate lawyer. That goes to ISC, Information Services Corporation, which is another level of government that keeps track of all land title transfer things. So the surveyor sends that to that, and then ISC has to accept it and then add it to their thing. And then after they get the acceptance of this transfer thing, then that goes to the real estate lawyer, and the real estate lawyer can start doing the final actual important land title transfer to the new person that you're giving or sold the property to. And that has to be submitted to ISC again. The banks have to be notified. The bank has to be paid. Then you have to pay your lawyer. And then there's land title transfer fees on it. Now, also with that property, if it's an active farm, business, agriculture thing that you're giving land to, there's sales tax applicable, GST, on the sale price of the lot. So if you sold it for whatever, $100,000, $5,000, and that's payable by the buyer, but buyers negotiate that you cover the GST type of thing. And if it's not an active farm business type of thing, then there's no GST applicable. There's like two different types of things. So there's ways to get around that sales tax extortion thing. And then, okay, after all you're said and done, and it depends what your situation is and the amount of expenses. So the taxes the taxes increase all of the taxes, but all these fees that aren't considered taxes, it's like they taxed you at a worse than capital gains rate or double the capital gains rate before you even got paid for the property, or before you even made an income. So the fees and regulations with 1, 2, 3 levels of government in every stage. And it's also important to realize that every one of these stages is unnecessary. Okay. And everybody in there shouldn't have a job. Their title shouldn't exist. It should be a very, very cheap and simple process. But in communist type countries, it's very, very complicated, and you always end up with this triangle of shit. So the government and nobody has responsibility, nobody does their job. So there's multiple levels in there. It's like, oh no, that's not the municipalities thing. That's community planning. Oh no, that's not community planning's things. That's ISC. Oh no, that's not ISC. That's the municipalities level. So it's kind of funny that way. But so you get extorted from before you even have any sales or income first. But so you can write that off. So the sale price is 100,000, or something, or whatever it is, just simple math, 100,000, and then less 30,000 in total fees to do the whole process. And it's 90% government fees that shouldn't exist, in my opinion. But so 100,000 less 30,000 is 70,000, but also you have to pay an extra 5,000 in GST. So that's $35,000 so far. And then depends how you have it set up, if your land is an asset that you initially paid for, and then it's money over and above what you initially paid for, then there's capital gains tax at the end of all that. So, at the end of it, maybe you get 40% of the lot value or something like that, in this butthole country. Now, that whole subdivision process. So I thought, what if you buy a big plot of land and then you do a development, and this development you're going to turn into some hamlet or community of only like-minded people, and actually set up like a survival type preparedness, self-sufficient retreat type of thing. Well, let's say you got land from somewhere for free or cheap, or it's all paid for and everything, and you want to do 50 lots on it. So 50 times $30,000 is $1.5 million in fees before you can even start doing anything or put in your own infrastructure, build a road, or do anything. 1.5 million before you start, to get 50 separate titled lots off of a piece of property for the preparedness community. And that is why, that's just a microcosm of the government involvement, and why you don't see too many developments, and why real estate and land and things are so expensive, and just the collapse of everything. But next rant about subdivision processes and the general public and government and things. So there was, in between me and the city, a golf course development. Now, this golf course was going to have 400 houses, all this green space, a small business center, and things like that. And it's been in the works for like 6, 7, 8 years when I first heard about it. And them going through all the process with all levels of government and the watershed authority and things. And then to push it through, they have multiple public hearings to hear all the thoughts of anybody in the entire municipality and the general public's thoughts on this thing. So I went to one of these council meetings, and this is back when I used to care about the generalized society and the community at large, before I turned inward to make my micro community, because I know that the big one's going to collapse. But I go to the council meeting, and I sat there for like an hour and a half. Well, first of all, the golf course developer went up there and said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to build this 400 house thing on whatever it was, half-acre lots. This is the road going around. We might have a restaurant and a little business center there. A lot of green space. We're going to plant a lot of trees. We're going to pave this road. We're going to pave the road going to it. And all at a cost, at our cost, no cost to the municipality. It's going to have its own sewage system treatment thing, and this is how that works. We are also going to put in ponds and lakes and bring wildlife in, or the wildlife naturally come. And we're going to maintain all the roads, so the RM doesn't even, or the municipality doesn't even have to have any cost at all for the entire development, both building it and maintaining it." Then the municipal government guy stood up, and this is literally going to double the size of our municipality with this one development. Okay. And then for an hour and a half, you listen to the general public. So somebody that lives 14 miles away and has nothing to do, this development has no concern with them. Some old boomer wasting everybody's time is the one that talks the most. And again, somebody that lives, 3 miles uphill, they're not even going to see the development. And they're talking about pond liners and water drainage and things. And the golf course and municipal things, that we hired the watershed government organization to do a full topographical report to see the difference between the runoff from the stubble clay farmer's field, which runs off a lot, and then the golf course, so all the roofs and where they put the ponds and the grass that they're going to plant and things. And the runoff is no different pre-development to post-development. But then the general public's like, Did you know that there's different types of pond liners? You could do one with just clay in the hole. You could do one with poly. Did you know that you could do a pond with concrete? And I would like a study on that. Do you think the golf course is going to have lights? Do you think they're going to do night golf? What about the noise on it? Things. And it was an hour and a half of complaining and not one good thing said about it. Now I'm not anti-development. I'm not a Malthusian. I don't think not enough food for the amount of people. I don't think we have too many people on the planet. I think we should have more. But I do think everybody's stupid, and it's like an episode of Idiocracy, and the government's stupid, and some of these systems that we have are stupid, and it's going to fail. Like, we could have amazing developments and advance humanity, and more greenhouses like I did, and more sustainable developments, and more people, and more economically free, and everything better, and better food and things. But if it weren't for stupid people and the system and the government and everything. But anyways, so I stood up, and at that time I don't like public speaking, but I'm like, I gotta say something here. And I'm like, you guys were talking about pond liner, somebody that doesn't even live and has anything to do with the development. I don't even know why you're talking. They paid the watershed, and it's done. This development is going to double the size of the municipality, and with proper management, what that means is your property tax gets cut in half, and they have the same amount of work to do. Like, so it's going to reduce property tax and probably increase your home price. If we don't do the development, then property tax is going to remain exponentially high and go higher, and your house price is going to stay the same or whatever. So I had an argument for how this development is very, very good for the community. It's going to reduce taxes. It's going to, the municipality doesn't have anything to do with the construction or maintenance or any costs involved. They just have to have more houses to send a bill to pay their portion of the municipal taxes or whatever. And I just went off, and but that's just a microcosm. So it's like that show Parks and Recreation. Ron Swanson there. He works for the government forever there, and he hates the government. He's like, we should cut government. But he also hates the general public, that he doesn't like talking to them and all their stupid things. Like, my favorite clip out of that is when they put Ron Swanson in a desk right at the front, and they allowed the public to come in to set their complaints. And they had this old boomer lady come in, say, excuse me, sir, I was at the park, and I saw a sign that says, don't drink the water. So I made some tea with it, and now I have an infection. Sir, you're not listening. And Ron Swanson's like turning his chair around. And I can see the government's perspective. I can see the people's perspective. So whose fault is it? It's everyone's fault. You are all collapsing this whole thing. It could have been amazing. It could have been great. You know, there could have been a beautiful golf course, a place to play golf with reduced property taxes, instead of a stubble, really crappy farmland field. There could have been like well-planted grass and irrigation, which would bring like more wildlife, better for everything. And it's just a microcosm for the whole thing. Like, and no different than if instead of a golf course, if you wanted to do a sustainable, self-sufficient preparedness type thing. Okay, here's another thing. When I stood up and did my thing, I said, what I would suggest from the municipality is you waive all of the fees instead of being upfront, where the golf course probably has to come up with multi-millions of dollars in fees before they break ground or do anything or sell a lot to get some money coming in. Here's my suggestion. Defer those fees. Well, I would like to see those fees reduced or gone, but if you're not going to do that, defer the fees to when they sell a lot, or there's where somebody's going to build a house, then you can collect the fees as they sell it, because all these fees you don't need. You're supposed to put it in reserve for a future school and things. You don't need them until money changes hands. The developers get some cash coming in, and as the cash comes in, then they can filter it back out in your extortion fees for the municipality. Like, you know, if I was leader of my municipality, it would be amazing. But again, would it be amazing because it's a democracy and stupid people vote and they're not going to vote for me because I make too much sense? And when I make sense, I don't know. It's everyone's fault. On the other hand, now this is super funny. So it completely contradicting all of these things I just talked about is, so that's getting somebody a separate title, separate piece of property. They get a separate property tax bill, separate utility things, a separate address, going through that process. But if you have a farm and you're set up and things, to fully contradict all levels of government with another level of government, the government is offering grants and programs and things to build temporary and permanent farm worker housing on properties, and then also specifically for Mexican workers and foreign workers and immigrants. So with this, there's no subdivision cost and things like that. And setting up my farm system. So I made sure I got agriculture land because I'm farming. My farm buildings are permitless or very easy to get permits for, and no tax on farm buildings. On agriculture land, it's the land part, it's just a small property tax. The residential yard site is high property tax, and the house is extreme high property tax. So the way I set up mine, I structured it properly where my property tax liability for my operation is not detrimental, where they're going to extort me out of existence type of thing. Whereas somebody with, 20 times less land than me in a development and a bigger house, no shop, they can't drill a well, they don't have any freedoms, they can't put a sea can, they can't build a barn, they're not allowed to have chickens, let alone pigs or something else, and it has a huge property tax liability. That is a piece of crap property. You don't want anything to do with that. The way I structured mine, my property tax liability is low. And the way I structured mine, I'm going into greenhouse business and small farming type stuff. So after high efficient greenhouse is done in a few years or whatever, I'm going to put up some hoop houses, expand the wife's flower thing, move to the local food box subscription thing. And if I put all this infrastructure up, it's impossible for me to maintain like 5 hoop houses plus the greenhouse I got, plus my other stuff, plus build a barn and expand some of the livestock and egg operations. I'm going to need to bring in help. So with not necessarily saying I'll apply for a grant. Well, I might, because the taxes never stop, so you might as well have the government as a middleman. So you pay the taxes and then get it back as a grant, and then somebody in the middle in the public sector or multiple people can rationalize their existence in the failing society. But you put up a bunkhouse or just like that. I did a whole video on preparedness communities and community building. Multiple examples. This is how the Hutterites kind of have it set up. It's a multi-corporation Hutterite colony is how it's set up, but there's not separate titles for the houses, so their savings there, and they set it up that way. If they had to put a separate title on each house with a $30,000 subdivision cost, it would cost like multi-millions of dollars for them. Yellowstone, that TV show based in Montana, all the farm worker or cowboys, because it's just a ranch. They don't do farming, just ranching. But it's a big bunkhouse. There's bunk beds. It's just a larger building. Looks like a public washroom with like 4 sinks and 4 toilet stalls and 4 showers, kind of a big common area, big common kitchen, common sitting area. Another house for the foreman of that. And actually looking into it, that's all. Actually, the government likes that you're building housing on your farm for the foreign workers specifically, but also for hopefully local workers. I can figure this out. So they'll probably have to permit it, like the Hutterites have to permit each house and get it inspected and all that crap. But doesn't have the $30,000 fee to subdivide in an extra title. So for creating a community type of thing, this is what I mean. There has to be a leader, it has to be a structure, and it has to be economically viable. It has to be set up like capitalism in a business. you know, I guess the Hutterites, their communist internal setup, engaging in capitalism in every way. It's kind of, but it has to be economically viable or it doesn't work. So if I want to bring more people into my system, then they're going to be literally partners, helpers, employees, a part of the farm. So, and they come live on the property, so they have a safe place. They're part of the community. You can have night watch with them. Everybody has different tasks, and do it that way without doing separate titles and going through a subdivision process. And that's just solely because of, again, the general public, society, democracy, communism, and government. So just another super quick rant about society in general and things. When I had a few rental properties, and every single year on average for as long as I've been alive, I think property tax has gone up 4% a year in the city where I used to have real estate. Thank goodness I don't anymore. It's like a relief off of my back. But anyways, in this rental property thing, property tax going up 4% a year. And I remember tenants telling me you give them a rent increase and they only let you do a rent increase 6 months in advance because of the government rules. Well, your rent's going up just a little bit. It's like, oh, geez, I can't afford to pay anymore. I'm like, well, try to explain it, without getting into it. Or back when I tried to explain things, well, government property tax went up and our insurance went up and all our bills to have this house went up. That means your rent goes up. Well, I can't afford to pay anymore. It's like, what do you expect me to do? Do you expect me to make less or take a loss next year to give you to keep your rent the same or only increase it a little bit? Or do I increase it the right amount so that I can pay the government extortion fees because of a failing system's inflation and government in general? It's not just inflation, like the money printing, it's stupidity of government as well. It's the two go hand in hand, and then prices increase like your property tax. So what am I supposed to do as the homeowner landlord? Leave your rent the same and then take a loss every year? And I bite the bullet because most tenants that I've had, it's either they're on welfare, so they have a government job, or they're just at home collecting a paycheck, was the type of houses that I had. So I can't afford to pay anymore. Well, ask socialist services, or ask ask your upper ups to ask the upper ups to ask the taxpayer to get extorted more to pay for your salary. And again, with the stupidity in Western real estate and Canada real estate, I think it's in a bubble. I think it's overvalued. There's too much government. Property tax is too high. I'd be hard pressed if somebody offered me a house for free or almost next to free, but it had a massive property tax liability, and I know all the processes that you need to do everything. I don't think I'd take it. I am literally not interested. If I was to invest in real estate, it might be in an emerging market, maybe farmland in Ukraine, maybe farmland in Africa, Uruguay, something like that, but non-Western countries. And again, every place has their own set of issues, and it's there's silly things everywhere. I'm just giving you my perspective on the extreme stupidity of Canada, right? If you, in Hong Kong, for instance, is the number one most economically free place on planet Earth. Second is Singapore. But it's kind of a funny thing, because in China, the government leases land, so it's like you buy a house with land under it, but you don't technically own the land. It's like a permanent or really long-term lease. And they're like, oh, that's not, or Canadians, that's not good. They should be able to own private property and stuff. It's like, we have the exact same system here, but it's just of a different name, and we get the shorter end of the stick. So in Hong Kong, there's no property tax. There's no sales tax. It's the most economically free place on the planet. Now, it has its problems with a super concentrated amount of humans. So there's pod housing and little cage for the low-end workers and things like that. And there's issues with that. But for land ownership, do we own land in Canada? Well, I don't know. It's just, I just paid massive amounts of extortion to, get property initially when buying it, or if I wanted to give some away property, I get massively extorted. And then on an annual basis, I get massively extorted with property taxes, rent. So as long as there's property tax, we don't own the property. Now, they brainwashed you that we have private ownership and stuff. And do you really? If you own the land, but there's a bill, like a rent bill on it every year, and if you don't pay that bill, then they take the land away. Do you own the land? Right? So it's like you had to buy it, but it's still the government's, and you have to rent it from the government. So again, that's just my perspective. It's different in all sorts of parts of the world. It's interesting to learn about it, but Hong Kong, the most economically free place on the planet, the government owns the land. They like outright say, we own the land, and you're going to do a 100-year lease or whatever it is. But in Canada, it's like, I bought the land. Here's your property tax bill, asshole. So those are some extreme long-winded rants. Hopefully I kept it mostly preparedness related, or it gave you some information if you were thinking about building, what to build, how to set it up, the different types of zonings. If you wanted to try to do a preparedness community where everybody has their titles, if you want to bring people into your farm economically viable operation, I hope that helped you figure out how to do that. If you have rental properties or in the real estate business, like that's how you do it. You don't build a house like for yourself. It's completely separate. Doing something for yourself that you're going to hold, that you're going to pass down to your kids. You want something high efficient, good, low property tax liability, no heating bill, minimal electric bill, or no electric bill, no water bill. What an asset, right? Lots of people think that their house and real estate is an asset. It's an asset to the bank, mostly, if you have a mortgage, unless that property produces value like rent. So if you had a property and its bills are $1,000 a month, but you rent it out for $1,200 a month, well, it's got $200 net positive cash flow, then it's kind of a cash flow asset to you. But as the mortgage holder, the bank expects you to take care of the property, babysit the tenants, keep the heat on, do the upkeep, cut the grass, but the bank owns the property and you're renting it from them. And the government owns the land and you're renting it from them. So, and let me know what you thought of that, if that was helpful, if that was too long-winded, if that was too freakishly autistic and you turned me off, or you listened to the whole thing. If you have any insights, if you're in a different country, let me know if it's the same relative idiocracy system to do things. Let me give you one more point, is when I talk to somebody at the government, at any level of government, I can see their perspective on things. Like, I'm very good at this. So, for example, subdividing a thing, it's like, well, geez, you want to give them whatever it is, 2 or 10 acres. Well, geez, did you know that 10 acres is on a gravel road? And did you know if somebody built a house there next to a gravel or dirt road, that it might be dusty sometimes? Like, then the person that built the house next to the gravel road is going to be calling the RM and complaining all the time, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I said, hey, look, you put in place your setbacks for if you have to like put a highway down this road and you can't build a certain amount of feet from the corner, a certain amount of feet from the road. You can't plant trees in the ditch. There's a setback for that. Past that, you can't micromanage somebody. And I told the government person this, if you want to, you can't micromanage, but I would do a little disclaimer, and I'd be happy to help you write it for you. I'd put to any new buyer that's putting in a permit to build something, I'd put like a letter from the government. Did you know that if you built next to a twin double super busy highway, that there's going to be some noise where you build your house? So please know that this is a decision you made and it's not our responsibility. You are allowed to build here at your discretion These are the setbacks. It's very simple rules. Did you know if you built next to a highway, it's going to be noisy? Did you know that if you build next to a busy gravel road or a super grid, that it's going to be dusty? If you do that and you decide to build a house, that's wonderful. Just don't call us about the dust. Or you can call us, and for $1,500, we can put some dust suppressing chemicals down on the road at an extra cost to you if the dust gets too much to handle. But the government, I can see their perspective. They want to micromanage because from their perspective, the government or the general public and their citizens are also dumb and have to be micromanaged. And there's a million different examples for this. A policy's in place because somebody really dumb did something, and then the government has to kind of generalize it, hire more people and put in all these stupid rules. And I think it's because the general public is dumb. You're right. They have to be micromanaged kind of, or else literally their IQs they just die or do something stupid. Like, that's why there's warning labels on things like, caution, hot coffee is hot, or on a pizza box, do not eat this box that the pizza is in, stuff like that. That's like just a microcosm, but the government putting in rules, and then I get pissed off of the rules that the government puts in because of the general public. So it's if you're looking for somebody to blame for all this stuff, you have to look in the mirror, and it's everyone's fault. It's not just the government. It's everyone's fault. So that's the perspective of me sympathizing with somebody in government at any level, which I have the ability to do. You're right. The general public is dumb, but you can't micromanage. Sometimes you have to let nature, like if somebody wants to eat the cardboard pizza box and then they choke on the cardboard and die, that's kind of their decision. You can only micromanage them so far. But, okay, leave it at that. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment. Subscribe if you haven't yet. You guys all have a wonderful day. Let me know what you thought. Take care.